As the movie begins, we meet Kevin Garner, an investment banker whose bank has just collapsed, leaving him jobless. He's lost all his stocks and assets, so he's currently distraught, sitting in a bar. Moments later, a woman named Molly approaches him, remarking that he's the most miserable guy she's ever seen. As the movie begins, we meet Kevin Garner, an investment banker whose bank has just collapsed, leaving him jobless. He's lost all his stocks and assets, so he's currently distraught, sitting in a bar. Moments later, a woman named Molly approaches him, remarking that he's the most miserable guy she's ever seen. Annoyed, Kevin asks her to leave, but she keeps talking to him. He soon finds out Molly is playing a game with her friends, who dare her to ask him out. Oh, my hope for the future's looking kind of soft, but my pants are feeling kind of hard. Despite this, they start talking about their lives, and Kevin becomes interested in her. He seizes the moment and asks Molly on a formal date. She's taken aback because she was only joking, but when she realizes he's serious, she accepts his invitation. The scene shifts to many years later, where they are now married. It seems it didn't matter to her that he was broke. However, their marriage is strained due to their son's sudden disappearance. Molly has become an alcoholic, and Kevin is also struggling. He works a desk job he hates, with a boss who constantly bullies him. Still can't find your son. Kevin, you little dumbass. One day, his boss calls him in, chastises him for poor performance, and hints he might be fired soon. Frustrated, Kevin leaves and gets into his car, where he receives a call from Molly. She scolds him for forgetting to pay the monthly bills, and they begin to argue. At this moment, another vehicle suddenly crashes into Kevin's car, knocking him unconscious. A while later, Kevin wakes up in an alley and sees an older man standing in front of him. The man introduces himself as the benefactor, which makes Kevin laugh. However, the benefactor insists he's serious and has a job for Kevin. He then leads Kevin to a road where, shockingly, there are no cars or people around, resembling a post-apocalyptic world. When Kevin asks where everyone went, the benefactor reveals that he moved them. He further clarifies that he has shifted Kevin to another reality, a parallel universe. Following this, they go to a restaurant where Kevin notices everyone is scared of the benefactor. A waitress named Tina comes to serve them, but the benefactor forces her to eat some food. The poor girl has no choice but to comply with his orders. He then explains that for every choice a person makes, there are countless alternate realities where different choices play out. These decisions create endless possibilities, meaning that everything a person can imagine exists somewhere at some point in time. The benefactor then reveals that there is a force capable of transferring people between these realities. He offers Kevin a job as one of his shifters in exchange for his dream life. Shifters are people who have given up their souls and now work to trouble other souls by moving them to different realities. The benefactor reveals that all other versions of Kevin have accepted this deal, and even Molly has been shifted twice. However, Kevin is skeptical and asks him to prove it by shifting Tina somewhere else. The benefactor agrees and activates a device on his wrist called the divider. Tina begins crying and begs him not to do it, but he immediately shifts her to another universe where parents never met and she was never born. Kevin is shocked, and when he sees Tina's parents crying, he feels terrible for his actions, as he should. It finally dawns on him that the benefactor is Satan himself. What does Satan have to do with the multiverse? The benefactor now wants Kevin to become one of his shifters and offers him a lavish life. He explains that he can give him the best version of Molly, who will do anything he says. However, Kevin rejects the offer and instead seeks help from God. This enrages the benefactor, who yells that Kevin will pay for this. Kevin continues to pray until the benefactor eventually vanishes, mortified by his actions. He apologizes to Tina's parents and leaves the restaurant. The scene then shifts to 5 years later, with Kevin still trapped in this dystopian reality. He lives under a fake name because he is infamous everywhere as the Kevin who refused. In this world, constant wars and destructive human activities have ravaged most of the planet, and people aren't good at coming up with cool nicknames. After millions of people vanish, the benefactor has gained control of the world. Most people now live in impoverished cities under the harsh rule of his officers. Meanwhile, Kevin does manual labor during the day to make a living. He often tries to recreate Bible verses from memory and secretly shares them with his friend Gabriel. Even though spreading faith is illegal, Gabriel is the only person he trusts and the only one who knows his true identity. Despite the hardships, Kevin remains optimistic that he will soon be reunited with his wife. One day, While going home, Kevin meets an old man named Russo, who is looking for his cat. Russo turns out to be the owner of a movie theater where he broadcasts live feeds from alternate realities. Kevin books a session and begins watching people from different realities. Soon, he comes across several versions of Molly, each with a different profession. He notices one Molly wearing a necklace he gave her during their marriage. This makes him realize that she's his actual wife. If there are truly infinite branching timelines, then no, she's probably not. Seeing her after so long, Kevin begins crying and touches the screen, but his time suddenly runs out. He asks for more time, but Russo claims that his schedule is fully booked and tells him to come back in a few days. That evening, Kevin is at a supermarket when he notices a little boy walking alone in the hallway. Moments later, the child disappears, causing Kevin to panic. He immediately alerts the mother, but she is confused and points out that her son is right next to her. Kevin insists the child has been swapped, but the woman thinks he's crazy and leaves. This incident reminds Kevin of the time he was at a supermarket with Molly and their son. When the couple got distracted for a moment, their son disappeared into thin air. The police searched for him everywhere, but all their efforts were unsuccessful. In the present, Kevin suspects it was the work of shifters and believes that his son is still alive somewhere, maybe in a whole bunch of other branching timelines. I don't know, Kevin doesn't seem to get this. Later, in the middle of the cold night, he scavenges for food in rubbish piles. He is then accidentally seen by his neighbor, Renchit, who invites him home for dinner. Upon arrival, Kevin is taken aback when Renchit and his wife call him by his real name. It turns out they are aware of his identity and know that he often writes Bible verses and gives them to Gabriel. Kevin gets scared and assumes they are shifters who will hurt him. However, Renchit apologizes and explains that he accidentally overheard his conversation with Gabriel once. He expresses a desire to educate his daughters about religion, admitting that he knows little about it. Renchit then has his daughters sing a Christian song, which moves Kevin to tears. Jesus is my friend. He's my only friend. Afterward, Kevin shares Bible stories with the family and explains that God is simply testing their patience. He assures them that once it's all over, they will be blessed with twice of what they once had. After a while, an alarm goes off throughout the town. The family turns on the news and learns that the benefactor is coming for another recruitment. The mayor warns everyone that if the benefactor needs anything from them, they must comply or face death. The next morning, Kevin returns to Russo's theater and finds him still searching for his cat. The old man reveals that it has been 4 years, but he still hopes his pet will return someday. Kevin sits in a chair and begins watching live feeds of alternate worlds. After observing several videos, he notices the real Molly and asks Russo to find her coordinates. However, Russo responds that it's pointless because, without the divider, Kevin cannot leave this world. Hearing this, Kevin recalls that the benefactor is coming to the city and plans to steal his divider. In the evening, he meets with Gabriel and asks for a gun to confront the benefactor. Gabriel thinks it's a suicide mission and argues that Kevin can't just shoot the demon. He tries to talk him out of it, but Kevin is adamant. In the end, Gabriel gives in and offers him his gun. The next day, Kevin arrives in front of a cave where the benefactor is recruiting someone. The place is guarded by the police, but Kevin manages to sneak inside. To his shock, he walks into a motel room instead of a cave. He tries to leave, but the cops outside fire at him, forcing him to retreat. Frustrated, Kevin begins smashing things around the room. He soon starts crying and scolds God for testing him like this. Just then, the benefactor shows up and takes the gun from his hand. He also summons Gabriel and asks if he gave Kevin the gun. However, Gabriel responds that he doesn't even know this man. The benefactor then mocks Kevin for trusting his writings to such a coward. He claims that what Kevin has been doing for the past 5 years is pointless and urges him to give up. The benefactor asserts that God does not care about him and that he will only be free if he becomes a shifter. Kevin, however, remains steadfast in his beliefs and refuses to sell his soul to the devil. Just then, someone knocks on the door, and when Kevin looks out, he sees several armed officers. He watches them shoot Ranchit, so he rushes back to the room and urges Gabriel to take cover. Unfortunately, Gabriel is also killed in the gunfire, and Kevin discovers a divider in his hand, revealing that Gabriel was also a shifter. Kevin quickly uses the device to transport himself to another world. In the next scene, Kevin falls into a lake and soon realizes that this is not his world. He then activates the device again and ends up in a psychiatric clinic. There, He is greeted by Dr. Gabriel, who asks him to go back. When Kevin refuses, many versions of Gabriel arrive and begin firing at him, but Kevin manages to escape and hides in a room. There, he comes across Tina, who seems deranged and has suffered greatly. She quickly recognizes him and blames him for her situation. Tina then asks him to send her back to her parents, but the Gabriels show up again, so Kevin quickly activates the device and travels to another world. This time, he arrives at the home of another Kevin, who is a shifter living a lavish life. He tries to sneak a peek, but his doppelganger quickly recognizes him and aims a gun at him. The man threatens to shoot him if he doesn't return the device. However, Kevin quickly activates the device and returns to the same dystopian world as before. He sees Ranjit being driven away in an ambulance and discovers that he was shot because of his involvement with Kevin. The cops notice him, so he runs away and arrives at Russo's theater. Kevin claims that he has the device and urges the old man to send him home quickly. Meanwhile, the cops also arrive and prepare to attack, but with Russo's help, Kevin manages to travel back to his original world. In the next scene, he finally meets his wife, who is shocked to see him after all these years. She asks where he was, and Kevin responds that he was stuck in another world. Molly, of course, doesn't understand, so he simply apologizes for neglecting her in the past and asks for a second chance. Although she seems to still love him, Molly responds that she has found someone else now. Kevin desperately tries to persuade her, but the benefactor suddenly appears and takes him away. Moments later, Kevin finds himself back at Russo's theater with officers all around him. The benefactor then summons Tina into this world as well. He tells Kevin that although he acts almighty and talks about God, he is selfish deep down, just like everyone else. He then holds Kevin at gunpoint and makes a final offer. He must choose between going back to Molly or sending Tina back to her family. The benefactor encourages Kevin to be selfish and choose his own life over caring about some random girl. Hearing this, Kevin feels responsible for Tina's suffering. She is a young girl who has endured so much after being separated from her family. While he is deliberating, he notices that Russo has finally found his cat. This makes Kevin very happy, realizing it is a sign of hope from God. Only Kevin could connect the dots between a cat and God. He boldly declares that he wants Tina to go back to her family. The benefactor is disappointed by Kevin's decision, as he wanted him to be selfish and let evil win. Filled with rage, he grabs a gun and prepares to shoot him. But just then, a divine power intervenes and Kevin is transported to another world. He finds himself in a bar where Molly is drinking alone. Kevin approaches her and comments that she looks like the most miserable woman he's ever seen. Molly is offended by the comment and explains that she just came from a 17-hour shift and is exhausted. Kevin quickly apologizes, admitting that he was trying to hit on her but failed. They discuss their lives, and he discovers that Molly is a single mother with a daughter. It turns out that Kevin does not exist in this universe, and she does not know him. However, he takes a chance and asks her out on a date, which she gladly accepts. A few years later, we see the couple getting married. Kevin states that although this is not his original universe, it is his home now. In this way, he never has to worry about his son who went missing at the beginning. I guess he is seen playing with his newborn son and adopted daughter, narrating how God has given him double what he once lost. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching.